What is Windfury totem? Baby, don't hurt me no more. No, for real. This little totem is pretty misunderstood, and I think it warrants an own video. Why do warriors get so freaking upset when they don't have Windfury? Even if you're a little shaman, you probably can tell that this video is gonna get you to drop that damn totem. So Windfury totem is the main reason, the only good thing about being Horde. As you guys know, the Alliance has Blessing of Kings, 10% more stats, they have Blessing of Salvation, 30% less threat. Those two alone make the Alliance the best faction for PvE. However, the Horde has way more damage potential. Warriors in the Horde do so much damage that the tanks cannot keep up. That's the cap, that's the problem with the Horde. So, having that understood, what is actually Windfury? Now, Windfury is a 20% chance to give you one auto attack. So every time you attack, you get a 20% chance that you are gonna get an auto attack off regardless of your auto attack timer. Now, another thing about it is that anything that is considered a melee ability, a weapon ability, the best way to tell if a weapon ability is a weapon ability or not, if you get disarmed, can you do it? Because if you cannot do it when you're disarmed, that actually means that it is a weapon ability. So hamstring, it does 10 damage, but it's a weapon ability. Revenge is a weapon ability. Sunder armor is a weapon ability, and of course all the DPS abilities, Whirlwind, Bloodthirst, Overpower, Heroic Strike, they are all weapon abilities. Now, for example, Taunt and Battle Shout, they are not weapon abilities, they are spells. And that's why when you get silenced as a warrior, you can't taunt and you can't do a battle shout because they are a spell. It makes sense, right? You're chanting it, you're reciting it, it's a shout. But yes, all the weapon abilities can also proc Windfury. Now, Windfury in Classic, because this was very different in the original vanilla, Windfury cannot proc of itself, but it doesn't have an internal cooldown. What does it mean? There is only one chance that you can get a Windfury off in a swing or ability. Why is it this way? Because in theory, if it wasn't the case, you could just get like one Windfury that procs a Windfury that procs a Windfury. You do the math, right? Like a super tiny chance that you get like an infinite attack. However, because of the code of the game, Windfury can proc off Windfury-like things. For example, Iron Foe has a chance of giving you 2 attacks, and those 2 attacks are not Windfury, so they are affected by a different internal cooldown, or lockout really, and Hand of Justice, the same thing. As you can see, in the code of the game, Hand of Justice is not Windfury, it is a different spell. So, in theory, you can get a Hand of Justice procs that procs a Windfury proc that procs an Iron Foe proc. They cannot proc again, but you can get like, what is it, like 2 plus 1 plus 1 plus the actual auto attack. That's like a quadruple auto attack. Is theoretically possible, tiny, astronomically tiny chance, but it can happen. As you can imagine, that is not very significant, but I thought it was funny to mention, so I might as well. But since it doesn't have an internal cooldown, it just cannot proc off itself, or it cannot proc twice in the same batch, in the same swing, the actual math is very simple to do. This is the equation I just came up. I didn't come up with it, the developers of the game came up with it, but this is how often you should be getting a Windfury proc. Right here we got every second, this is the one, is 1 second. We divided by 1.5 because 1.5 seconds is the global cooldown. Every global cooldown you should be casting some ability. Of course, in reality you are not gonna cast some ability because Whirlwind and Bloodthirst, they get a cooldown, and you're probably not gonna be spamming Hamstring or something unless you're two-handers. So the effective proc per minute in the global cooldown, the abilities is gonna be actually lower, but that's just an illustration. And on the other side, every second we divided by weapon speed, because the slower the weapon speed, the slower, the less opportunities you get to proc Windfury. And then we multiplied by 60 seconds, because a minute has 60 seconds, and we divided by 5 because 20% chance, that is 1 in 5 chance. But this little equation should tell you how many times you should be in theory getting Windfury in average. That's what we call the PP, I get it, PPM, procs per minute. For example, this is a weapon speed of 4. What is a weapon speed of 4? A slow two-hander. That's a weapon speed of 4. And as you can see, you get 11 procs per minute. On a given minute on average, you should be proccing Windfury 11 times. Now, what happens if you lower the weapon speed? That's one of the common questions. Is a faster weapon speed a problem for Windfury? Because of course, you look at this math, and the faster the weapon speed, the more Windfury procs you should get, right? Like for example, a speed of 270, which is a slow main-hander. 270 I think is the speed of the Dalrens, or was it 280? I don't quite remember, it was one of those. So as you can see, you got a 12.4, repeating of course, proc per minute rate on Windfury. So a faster weapon means more Windfury. But will that actually translate into damage? Here's the thing, right? You get 11 Windfury on a slow weapon and you get 12.4, repeating of course, on a fast weapon. But does it mean that a faster weapon is gonna do more value? Well, no, because your faster weapon, 12.4, repeating of course, procs of Windfury per minute, gonna beat the fat 200's 11 procs per minute? That's a good question. And the actual answer is no, because you got 11 procs per minute of a fat 200 compared to 12.4 of a smaller 100. And here's the other thing, right? We talked about the GCD again, this little part in here, the abilities. In theory, you're gonna be casting the same amount of abilities if you are 200 or if you are dual wield. Actually a little more, because if you're horde, you're gonna be doing hamstring spam on the horde. I made an entire guide on it. So you're actually gonna do more globals than a dual wield. And those globals do not actually care if you got a dual wield weapon or a 200 weapon. So all things equal, a slow weapon is gonna get more procs than it should get compared to a faster weapon because of the abilities. I put the equation on a graph so you can see. As you can see, the slower the weapon, of course this goes way longer than an actual weapon in WoW would be. This is like a speed of 20 here. As you can see, it flattens out. There is a point where it doesn't really change the procs per minute the slower the weapon gets. The line flattens. You can see right here. The slower the weapon, the more damage from Windfury you get. And that is something that I can back up in the simulator. I am not a big fan of simulators, mind you, but for these one-to-one examples, they are pretty much perfect. So let me introduce you to my homie, the pre-raid beast orc. I got two orcs in this simulator. One of them has a two-hander and one of them has a dual wield. We're gonna start with the two-hander warrior first. We got the Black Rock Slicer, I cannot say the old name anymore. Gosh dang Blizzard, that is a weapon speed of 4. It is this little weapon right here. Very hard hitting weapon because it's slow. But then we take the Gravestone War Axe. It has a similar proc. It does more DPS. You can see it has even more DPS, but it is way too fast. So how will that change the numbers of Windfury? First of all, we're gonna take the slow weapon, the Black Rock Slicer, as a reference. And we are gonna enable Windfury and we're gonna get a DPS of 272. Oh wait, rending is not enabled. Okay, there we go. I forgot the consumables too. I thought when you saved the profile it kept everything. I am not very used to these simulators. Okay, so the actual DPS you're gonna get is 267 DPS. Doing your standard 200 rotation that I showed before, you know, your overpower, your slams, all the cool stuff, hamstring spamming as a rage dump, obviously. So with Windfury, we're gonna do 267 DPS. But if we disable Windfury, we're gonna get 207 DPS. So the baseline is that if you lose Windfury, you're gonna do 0.77% of the damage you're supposed to. Now, if we change the weapon to a faster one, what should happen is that the number actually gets bigger because you lose less damage from Windfury. That's what the model should show. So we're gonna change the weapon really quick here. We're gonna take the, what's the name of this thing again? The Gravestone War Axe. We're gonna simulate it without Windfury, 206. And we're gonna simulate it with Windfury, 261, which is a little less than the Black Rock Slicer. It is 6 DPS less actually. But interestingly enough, the non-Windfury damage is only 1 DPS less. So this already shows you the result, right? When without Windfury, the fast weapon and the slow weapon is only a 1 DPS difference. But with Windfury, it is a 6 DPS difference. And if we take a look at here right now, 78. Windfury accounted for 1% less damage on a faster weapon than on a slow weapon. Now, is this a big deal? Is this significant? Well, no. As a matter of fact, most of the big difference is actually from the weapon scaling and not Windfury itself, but Windfury is playing a role, and Windfury is slightly less value the faster the weapon. I am too lazy to do it, but if you get like a rotation that is only hamstring and nothing else, and you just do every global hamstring, the value of Windfury on a slower weapon should be even more. So that is the number one question that I get asked all the time, and no. A faster weapon doesn't give you more value of Windfury, the opposite. The slower the weapon for Windfury, the better. Now, does that mean that dual wielding you want a slow offhand? Because we talked about the main hand, Windfury is your main hand damage, and no. The actual answer is that you want the fastest offhander possible. Now there is a better reason for it, and that is deep wounds. Your offhand, the faster it is, the faster you can proc deep wounds, and every Fury warrior has this talent, so it improves the uptime of the dot, so of course you want a fast offhand just for that. Your offhand doesn't affect the damage of your Windfury procs, so in turn, in the Horde it is even more important to have a fast offhand just to get more value of Windfury, to get more Windfury procs. The best way I can show you how this works actually, we take a standard dual wielding warrior, and we are gonna take a baseline of a faster weapon here, Seratil, a really good weapon, you know, 40 DPS, 1.90 speed, a lot of people use it, and we take a fast offhander of 1.70, and yes, I am taking an orc by the way, because I could go for some other race, but this is the Horde, right? If you're a DPS warrior, you are probably an orc, you cannot take humans into the Horde, can you? So Seratil should do a DPS of 283, but we can take Riven Spike from lower Blackrock Spire, it does 2 less DPS, so it is a lower quality weapon, but it has a speed of 290. In theory this should be worse, right? Because it is less DPS, but if you look at the results, 289, that is a 8 DPS increase, that is pretty significant. So you get even more procs for free, regardless of how slow your main hander is. And that is also another one of the many reasons that dual wield eventually outscales two-handers by a lot. Windfury value, believe it or not, is even better on dual wield after you get like a crap ton of gear. So if dual wield gets more value from Windfury than two-hander most of the time, why do people say that you need Windfury to make two-hander viable? That's another question, another one of the myths I want to dispel, and that's for a very simple reason that has almost nothing to do with the actual value. That is because of your rotation. As a two-hander warrior, the way you dump your rage is through slam. Now, slam with the talent and you take the talent, it is faster than your global cooldown, so you cannot do a slam and another slam back to back to back to back. And slam resets your attack timer, so you cannot really like waste those 0.2 seconds in between slams. That is a waste of time, that is a problem. So what warriors in the Horde can do is you do a slam, and if you still got rage that you need to dump, you can do hamstring. It does like 10 damage, but it doesn't matter because it can proc Windfury. So you are basically fishing for Windfury procs to use your rage. You never do Heroic Strike in the Horde, because Heroic Strike for two-hander sucks. Of course, if you do not have Windfury, spamming hamstring is not gonna do anything for you, so you gotta go Heroic Strike, which is a very inefficient rage dump, and that's the reason that Windfury is so important for two-handers. Not because it is more valuable for them, but because it is the only way they can do a rotation that actually makes sense. Does that mean that in the Alliance playing two-hander is impossible? No, even early on, two-hander makes a lot of sense for if you can get it, you know, without a lot of gear. But the Horde does way more freaking damage than the Alliance. I can show you. A two-hander with Windfury, he got a DPS of 261, but if we take Blessing of Might and Blessing of Kings from the Alliance, right, the counterpart, he does 216, so that's a 50 DPS loss. That is insane. Of course, we're gonna have to change the rotation a little bit. That's not fair. Gotta do it like this. Okay, 216 is a little better because you do Heroic Strike instead of hamstring. It still freaking sucks, man. It still sucks. It's one of those things that you don't actually look into until you actually look at the numbers. 200 in the Alliance does 18% less DPS than in the Horde. That is a lot. Now, another question you might ask yourself is, what about the rage generation? How significant is Windfury for your rage? And that's probably the more important for low gear players, people without a lot of crit, because that's the people that need more rage. We can also calculate that. If we go to the settings here, we're gonna enable Windfury once again. DPS of 299, all that stuff in the Horde, we talked about it. Your rage dump is Heroic Strike, right? So on average in a fight of 50 to 60 seconds, so a minute. In a given minute, a dual wield warrior with Windfury is gonna do Heroic Strike 2.37 times. So that means he was rage capping 2.37 times. But if we get rid of Windfury and we do it again, and without Windfury he did 1.29 Heroic Strikes, so essentially half. It doesn't mean that you got exactly half the rage, because you only do Heroic Strike when you got excess rage, but as you can see, it is a lot of rage. It is way more than 20% rage. Also, now that we're at it, how much damage do you lose as a dual wielder? Because for a dual wielder, Windfury, even though you get more value, it is not that big a deal. And as you can see, we go from 253 without to 289 with, so that is a 13% loss of value in damage. So playing perfectly, Windfury is Well, yes, it is a huge DPS increase, but it is not as huge as you might think. Now, the thing is that you are not gonna play perfectly. You are always gonna make mistakes. And having that extra bit of rage is gonna prevent you from, is gonna make your mistakes less costly. When you may mess up your rotation and you generate less rage, that little rage you have, if you waste it on like the wrong ability, that is a problem. That is a lot of DPS you wasted. So that lot of rage is actually gonna matter more for the people that do not play very well, like me, than for the people that do play very well. And that is why in the Alliance, all the speedrunning guilds are in the Alliance, because you got like a bunch of people that play perfectly, and 13% less damage is something you're definitely gonna feel, but they will trade Blessing of Salvation for 13% damage every single time. It just makes sense. Now, the final question I get all the time about Windfury is Windfury more valuable with or without gear? And actually, I can figure it out pretty easily. We can use a proxy here. We are gonna take the same warrior and we're gonna disable Onyxia. Onyxia is a bunch of melee attack power and a bunch of crit, so we lose this is like losing a bunch of gear, right? We're gonna take the baseline of a perfect warrior with all the buffs. We take 290 DPS, and if we disable Windfury, this warrior is gonna do 253. So, as we looked at it, that is a 13% loss of DPS. But if we get rid of wall buffs and we run the same test again, Windfury, no wall buff here, that is 240, and no wall buff, no Windfury is 210. So as you can see, the number is not very different. It should be, it would feel that it should be more huge, but the trend is actually there, 75 compared to 72. So that means that if you do not have a lot of gear, Windfury is actually making your damage a little better than if you do have a lot of gear. Windfury is more valuable for less geared people. And it makes sense because as the more you get gear, the more rage you have, and you can only do so much with rage. There is a point where you get more rage than you can really use. Heroic Strike is nice, but like doing a couple more Heroic Strikes is not gonna be that big a deal for you. So yes, the less gear that you have, the more important is Windfury. Even if it is not by a lot, it is still a 10. Hopefully that should clear up all the questions, so we're gonna go over it again. Is a faster weapon or a slower weapon better for Windfury? No. For both dual wield and two-hander, slower weapon is better. Fast off-hander though, because fast offhand means more procs. So is Windfury 20% more damage? Well, if you're two-hander, yes, because that means your rotation can improve. Not necessarily because of Windfury itself, but because your rotation changes for something way better. For a dual wield, it is about a 13% difference. So no, it is not 20%, but it is 20% rage. A little more even. But as you can see, this is why a lot of people go, why is the Alliance better even though the Horde has more damage? Well, the problem with the Horde is that threat is a problem, and Blessing of Salvation is 30% less threat. That's a buff from Paladins. And it doesn't matter how hard you can hit, because of how warriors work in vanilla, a DPS warrior is always gonna outscale a tank. So 20% more damage, 13% actually, 13% more damage overall for all the warriors is gonna mean that warrior DPSers are gonna do more threat than a warrior tank. After some gear threshold I am too lazy to work out. So even though warriors can potentially do 13% more damage, they can't actually do it because they pull aggro and they die. And in the Alliance that doesn't happen. So would you trade having a tank tanking the boss instead of a random DPS dying for 13% damage? The truth of the matter is that if you are in one of those guilds that actually is doing like the best theoretical damage possible, the answer is yes. Blessing of Salvation is better than Windfury every single time. Because tanking in vanilla doesn't make any damn sense. Subscribe, join the Discord, and thank you for watching.